and you said to me, I'm not happy because your vantage point was that was out of whack for me. Like I was
Mm,
more mommy than wifey. And
mm.
understandably so, when you have a brand new baby, you've never
Yeah,
done this
early on.
before, like it's super easy to make them to the center of your world. But if you don't feel like you're first, even if the baby is taken up 90% of the time, there can be ways that you can make your spouse feel even more important than that child. Welcome. This is For Better and Worth.
The podcast where we don't believe you have to sacrifice your relationship while you grow and build your net worth.
We are your hosts.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Ericka Young, and we're so glad you're joining us today.
All right, y'all, let's get into it. Hey, babe, how you doing?
Good. How are you today?
I'm doing good. This is it's kind of a special episode.
It is. We have been married for a long time.
Why you look like that? Yes, this is we felt like here at the For Better and Worth podcast where
You
we
turned
talk
on your
about
voice.
relationships and money. It's a perfect time to talk about both of those things, seeing as how we have been married for 26 years.
That's a long time, babe.
Yeah, that is a long time.
I feel like when people get married, they don't actually fast forward. We say we want to be married forever, blah, blah, blah. But when you count up the years and you count up the experiences and you
Yeah.
count up the things that you go through and all of that, like sometimes I stand in awe. Like, I'm like, whoa, like that's a lot of time.
Well, I continue to say to myself, like, man, how do we get here?
Yeah.
Like, I think the good thing about that is time flew, and time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah.
And so I think even though, we've been together for more than half of my life, I feel like it's been a good run. Everything hasn't been perfect, but most things have been very far from, bad.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the thing I would say to somebody is it's not going to be perfect. Like just jump to that part. Like sure you're in love and all of that, but like it isn't perfect. But I feel like we're well matched, if you will. Like I feel like we're even when it's not perfect or we had those moments where you gonna get on my nerves or I get on your nerves because that junk
I,
happens
I get on your nerves.
routinely.
I guess
Routinely.
I laugh because I know it to be true.
Yes. And sometimes you do that junk intentionally to get on my nerves. But anyway, I digress. Yeah, all of that, yes, that part. But I feel like we can recover more quickly, or we just have a flow a little bit where it's like, I know you didn't mean harm, or I didn't mean harm. And so we're able to sort of, get back to what matters most, which
Yeah,
is caring for each other.
well, I think we gotta kind of take a step back because people will say, "Wow, 26 years. How did you get there?
Yeah.
What did you do? How,
Let's go there.
So they talk about all the things, and for me, I really start with that. I genuinely like you.
Yeah.
I like you as a person. I like you as, a friend. All the aspects about you that make you a good wife. I like those things. And I think those are very important factors that people have to consider. So if you're considering getting into a relationship that you want to turn into a potential marriage, I think you got to be conscious of, is this person a good person that you could be a friend with, that you like to have fun with, that you want to spend time with? Because all those things matter when you translate into marriage. And if it weren't for those things being present, I don't know if we would have made it as long as we have.
Yeah. I will say that honestly, like when our kids left the house and moved on to do their thing, the one thing I held on to was that I like you. So I genuinely was like, okay, so I know that there's going to be more time with just you. And like as a human, you're a good human. You know what I mean? Like,
Well, I appreciate that.
I mean, it's true, but
I
it's
try to be a good human.
oh Lord. But yeah, I mean, it's true. I feel like that's the anchor, if you will. Like that's the thing where it makes it a little easier when our love languages are different, or our motivations are different, or the
Yeah, and we fundamentally approach things differently sometimes.
right,
There's a lot
right.
that we have in common and we have shared views and perspectives, but it's not everything.
Yeah.
And I remember I used to tell the kids all the time, I was like, look, your mama was here before you and she's gonna be here after you. And
Facts.
so your mom comes first. And so the kids came second. And I think in relationships, sometimes people get that out of whack because they put the kids first, or they put work or a job first, and then somewhere down the line, that's where your spouse begins to fall. And I say right off the rip, you got to change that where those places where they fit, and your spouse has to be high on that list and really should be first, after the Lord. But then
Well,
it should be your spouse, then your kids, then work. So you got to get your priorities straight and where you set people.
yes. And you know what? I remember when we had our daughter, our first child, around 3 or 6 months after she was born. I remember sitting on our bed and you said to me, I'm not happy, because your vantage point was that was out of whack for me. Like I was
Mm,
more mommy than wifey. And
mm.
understandably so, when you have a brand new baby, you've never
Yeah,
done this
early on.
before, like it's super easy to make them to the center of your world. But if you don't feel like you're first, even if the baby is taken up 90% of the time, there can be ways that you can make your spouse feel even more important than that child, right? Like you want to keep the baby alive. Like honestly, the first couple months we was just trying to make sure she stayed
We're trying to
alive.
figure out how to be
Okay.
parents
I
because we didn't
mean,
know.
when she was crying, I thought she was about to die. When she didn't eat good, I thought she was about to die. You know what I'm saying? When she didn't sleep good, I thought she was about to die. Like all of it. I was just like, she was.
And me, I'm on the other side. Like, just be cool. She's gonna be all right.
Oh my gosh, it would drive me into an emotional frenzy. But I think
But that's
that
that's kind of how I am. I'm just level.
you
I'm just I'm
are,
just calm.
yeah, that's your personality. But and to some degree, once I learned a rhythm, I figured some of those things out. But especially when I went back to work.
You had no choice at that point.
Right. And so it requires communication. So I honestly respected the fact that you actually said something that you felt safe enough that you could. And then I received that in the manner in which it was given. You weren't saying, I don't love you.
Yeah, but I think you bring that up, and that's a very important point in relationships. Is you have to have that open dialogue and that
Hmm.
ability to express how you genuinely feel.
Right.
Because if you don't ever express how you feel and share those, then it's going to be like you're creating a story. And we always talk about this, and people don't realize it. And it wasn't until you went through this experience like years ago, and they talked about your story, and
Hmm.
everybody has their story. And what happens is in that story, I do something and she adds to that story, or
Right.
she does something and she adds to my story, but we never communicated. So it just continues to build and build and build, and it becomes this whole big thing. And without effective and proper communication, where you can, one, share those stories
Sure.
and say what is going on or how you perceive something, that's how good communication works. But I see you want to say something.
I do. So the story, I just want to define the story because I think that this is so important if people can get this.
Oh man, it's so
It
important.
is, it is in that moment, the sum total of your past experiences, your upbringing, what you heard, what you
Hmm.
saw, what you witnessed, how you behaved, and the trigger of whatever a person doesn't have to be your spouse, but
It
it
could
could
be
be
anyone.
anybody who triggers something, and your entire story, how you have walked through life and the person that you have become is impacted by that trigger. And so if, for instance, just as an example, when you said to me, I'm unhappy, like it was the sum total of all the things that potentially caused you to feel second to somebody else, right? Or what have you, like all of your life experiences that brought you to the place where you were like, hold on a second. She's making this baby number one. She's spending all of her time with this baby. All she's concerned about is this baby. And maybe some other things in your life led you to this, right? Or it was just simply the 6 months leading up to you being able to say, okay, hold on a second, let's regroup because I'm still here. Remember me? And like, that's your lived experience. And I'm never going to fully understand that lived experience because it is all of your story being intersected and the trigger occurred. And you're like, hold on, this is how I'm responding because of that. And so, like, everybody's story is different and the triggers can be different. The moments can be different, but how we respond is what we are actually in control of, you know?
And I think I even simplify the story somewhat because oftentimes people go through life and like you talk about triggers or things that happen. It could just be anything, you know, like I said something or you have a friend and they said something to you that you didn't like.
Yeah.
And you add to your perception of the situation,
Right.
how you receive it. And it's all happening in your head.
Right.
And I think that's the important thing about the story. It's happening in your head.
A lot of it is not based in reality or
Right.
what other people have actually said or done too.
It's just how you've taken it. And in your head, okay, yep, I knew they were like that. Then they did something, then yep, I knew it. Now you adding to the story.
Confirmation bias.
And then they looked at you wrong or they didn't invite you somewhere or something happened and now you're just continuing to add to that story. And it's like, you've never taken what's going on up here and expressed it from here to the person that you're creating this story about. And I feel like we have simultaneous stories going on at so many times and we're not expressing those. And this happens, I am certain, every day in relationships where your boyfriend or your girlfriend or your husband or wife, your significant other, they said something or they did something that you internalized and received it one way. And now that story is in your head. And then they did something later that day or later that week. And now you've added to that story, but you've never shared it with your partner.
Can I give you a simple example?
Go ahead.
I'm going to give you a simple example of today. Okay.
Today.
Today, right
wow,
now,
okay.
today.
Let's get real.
No, it's not like even a big story, but it is a story like in my head. So typically on the weekends or specifically on a Sunday, I'll get up and I'll tool around the house and kind of get my mind or, self together and kind of, today I started thinking about a grocery list or I had clothes that I had hung up and I want to, put them back into my closet. And, I had to fill up my water bottle, just all the things, feed the dog, all the things. And so I just sort of take this moment to myself and it takes a little bit of time, but I just get out the bed and go.
I typically don't bother you.
No, you don't. And, but he's in the bed, he's chilling. He's not asleep though. He's on his phone or whatever. So, I'm like, okay, let me go get dressed. Let me go do the things. And like, another 30 minutes has gone by. I'm like, dude, do you realize that we got to go to church in an hour? Like, I mean, at some point, are we going to get to getting ready? And so in my head, I'm thinking, gosh,
he's still in chill mode.
He has chilled and I have like sort of been active. And so my story is like, I would love to chill. Like, but I didn't get a chance to do that. You know what I'm saying? I got to go get this together before church and all of this. And I'm like, come on. And usually I don't say anything like, get up when you want to. And it's so interesting because today was the day where church was super busy. Yeah. Like we didn't get our normal parking area. We did end up getting a decent
We have our preferred parking
our
at
preferred
church.
seating as well. But it really got busy in there. And in my head, I'm like, we needed that extra 5 or 10 minutes. Right. And so in my head, I'm like, if he had just gotten up, like that's in my head, if he had just gotten up. And so, but here's the thing is, the other part of this is what I know to be true ultimately, because I think these are the little foxes that in a relationship annoy people. They cause you to think about them differently, etc. the thing that I can learn from you is that you know how to chill and relax. Like I'm always in my mind about the stuff to get done, right? And that's how we're different. Like we're, you find a way to chill, relax, and I'm like always
Go,
on
go, go,
thinking
go,
of the
go.
things, right? Even
Yeah.
even when I'm sitting there watching TV, I'm like, can I clean out my email? Do I need
And
to
I'm like,
respond
how
to some
can you
text
watch a
messages?
show
You
and do
know,
other stuff?
I mean, but sometimes you do it. Sometimes you're playing games or whatever the case. But I'm always in a productive mind. But that's because my love language is acts of service, and I feel like keeping on top of some of this stuff is loving my family well, or being, responsive to, the needs of the household in some way. That's loving my family. And so but it's different. Anyway, the point is that we kind of move through the world
Yeah,
differently.
we see things differently. And
Yeah.
I think as people are listening to this, I think what has helped us be successful and have this, marriage that's lasted this long is that we can speak up
Yeah.
and we can share what we're thinking. Like you even said, hey, we got to be somewhere in an hour, and lately I just been a little slow pace, just a little slow motion, and so but for you to feel comfortable just saying, hey, we got to be somewhere, and you
In a
always
loving
ask me,
way.
yeah, and it wasn't like like, hey, get up, we got to go. I was
Right.
like, 'cause I'd be like, hey, you ain't my boss.
Right.
I move when I want to
You
move,
you will say something like that.
but
And I'll be like, calm down, sir. Calm down.
but I think it's important to have all of that in a
Yeah.
relationship. Like we have our little, our back and forth that we
A
that we do.
banter.
Yeah, a good banter is important,
Yeah.
but you also need to be able to say something that's on your mind in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was moving a little slow, and for you to say, hey, we got to be somewhere. I said, hey, I'll be ready. I'll be ready to roll, and I was ready to go.
And then I also knew that you wanted to have a specific thing for breakfast. And I was like, all right, hey, do you still want that? Let me put it in
Yeah,
because
you
you
helped
hadn't
me
come
out.
downstairs.
Yeah.
And so, I feel like the other thing that we have learned, one of the biggest things that we have learned is that this is Team Young,
Yep.
right? We are Team Young. And if everybody else around us is crazy or wilding out
We
or
got each other. We all we got.
hey, we all we got. And
We all we got.
so if we are not whole, then where do we go? What does that mean? Like, that's not safe, right? It's not secure. It doesn't feel like a good place to be. And
I always go back to when we went through like premarital counseling, and one of the pastors told us that marriage is about giving up your right to be right. And it's like, whoa, wait a minute, nah, because everybody wants to be right. You wanna get your position, and you want to be right. Like you could have taken a stance that, hey, I'm right that we need to be on time, or we need to do this, and you messing around. But it was like, hey, we got to be somewhere, and I'm usually the one that's like always wanting to be there.
you have been known to go sit in the car and wait for me. And I'm like, this is crazy. Like, it's
Right.
really 2 minutes.
And
extra.
I'm like, and I want to be there before time, because I've
Yeah.
always had the
Yeah.
mindset to be early is to be on time. To be on time is to be late, and to be late is unacceptable.
Yeah. And I'm like, usually,
I can get there around the time that I'm
I
supposed
want
to
to
be
be
there.
on time. That's the thing. It's like I like to be on time, and to be on time
To you is not to be early.
it's not to be early, because see, that's wasted time. That's a difference, right? Like I'm like, if
Ooh, this
if
is
I'm
so-
there 10 minutes early, I could be doing something during those 10 minutes. Like I feel
See?
time.
See,
I
people,
totally feel time.
it is so funny how we are so different, but yet we vibe.
We do vibe. We do vibe. Yeah. So yes. Matter of fact, we were actually watching a series yesterday, and we watched 2 of the I don't think I could actually sit still to like binge watch a whole series. I don't think I could do it.
I don't know if I do that.
We-
It takes too much time to do that.
It
stuff.
does. And I'm thinking, we watched 2 of this series, and I was like, ooh, but there's some other stuff I could be doing. What do I really want to do today?
Yeah,
And
I think that's just kind of your makeup too.
It
It's
is.
like, I tell you sometimes, like, just chill out, like, just relax. It's gonna be cool. Stuff is gonna get done, And I think that we need that. But sometimes I need to get in gear and be like, you know what, I got to do
Yeah.
ABC. And so I think we
Right.
feed off of each other
Yeah.
in those times that maybe we need to step into a different phase, or maybe we need to take it down a notch.
I'm curious, do you feel like there's a season so far in our relationship that has been really great, or a season that has been really tough?
I think we talked about it on the podcast, the 10-year itch. That was a
Yeah.
tough time frame.
Yeah. What made that tough? What was that season? What did that look like?
I think that season was tough because there was a lot going on
Yeah.
in our lives. You know, we both were working and we had small children. I was in grad school, and that was just a really demanding time period in life. And I think all the external demands were putting pressures on us internally
Yeah.
that made it a tough season. But I'd say, I think there's been, a lot of time that has been good. We have been, what has worked for us is that we've aligned on very fundamental and important things.
Oh.
Like we align on finances, we align on a faith and belief in God and going to church, and we align on how we're going to talk and communicate with each other. We align on how we're going to raise our children. We align on how we're going to have friends and how we interact with those people. And, we align on how we're going to approach things with our families, on
Our
lending.
in-laws.
Yeah, lending money or anything that comes up, challenging things that come up with our extended family, how we're going to respond and support one another. And I think those are all fundamental things that we have aligned on extremely well that have really helped us to have that solid base and foundation that we could build upon. And if people don't have that, or there are too many, times where you bumping heads, because I would hate to always be bumping heads and always got to, go through the Spanish Inquisition of explaining something with, 20 questions. I wouldn't enjoy that.
Yeah.
And so when you ask me about good periods, I think that we've had really good periods and stretches. And here, since the kids have really been in college and out of college and finishing up, it's just been kind of like, we've just, re-engaged and focused on one another as they're charting their way. There to support them and help them, but, kind of prioritizing, us and our relationship as we continue to move forward. So I think these last, 4 or 5 years has been a really good period.
I would say that a fun season, it was busy, but a fun season was when both of our kids were sort of in either middle school or high school.
A bunch of activities.
And they had activities, and we were just kind of sharing, and it was just the core four. I mean, on my phone, I named us the core four, right? And when we were all at home and we were able to go vacation together. We had the same schedule, like the kids had the same schedule, and we were just doing life, and nobody was in diapers, but also, nobody was off doing something different. Like we were together. Like that season was, and I would say probably it was Faith being in high school and Olivia being 4 years behind her, and just the activity of it all. Like there was never a dull moment. Two, that was a good season with the kids, just like our interactions, being able to deposit in them having an understanding. That was a season where you and I could go on dates, you know what I mean? Because they were old enough to be at home by themselves.
We'll be back. We'll see you guys later.
Right. And so, and then we were also out of debt. So we actually had a little bit of money to kind of do whatever we wanted to do without feeling the financial pressure. And so, because when the kids were little, like that tough season, that 10-year season, or 7 to 10 year even, for me, I would say, I don't know if maybe it was 10 years. It was 10 years. But when you were in grad school and we were just coming up out of debt, and
well, we've been out of debt for a few years, but
just a couple of years.
We moved into a different house.
Yeah.
And I think that put some added pressure on it.
Right. And I was quitting my job, or it was in that season. There was there was some movement in our finances, but we ain't had nothing like amassed at that, you know what I mean? Like we had been saving for retirement, but we didn't have like a lot of extra cash flow in
Yeah.
the budget. And so, like,
We didn't have that whole 12-month saving. Maybe we had 3
no,
months
I
that we were
mean, we
building.
were building, it was still building. And it just, so my thing is like, it can be challenging in different seasons and it can be fun and it can be like right now, I think we're comfortable with like our kids being out of the house. And it's sort of nice to sort of be that advisor or
And
mentor in their
one more kid,
life.
we gotta get out of here.
Don't be trying to kick them out soon.
The four-legged kid.
No, he can't go nowhere. Okay. Leave him alone. He's not going anywhere.
Any suitors for a
No.
7-year-old?
You are always trying to get rid of my dog. He is staying, okay? You know what? You have made it with him half of his life already. So,
You know,
kudos.
that could probably be a whole podcast episode
Yes.
about getting into relationships with, one person who loves pets and one person who is maybe not as fond of pets.
Or just simply doesn't like them. Be honest. Like you don't like pet.
I'm not a big
You're
pet.
not a dog person.
I'm not a big
That is
pet.
how you are to be
I
described.
would say probably pets. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't grow up with a bunch of pets.
But I'm
and
not trying to have no other
animals.
pets other than a dog.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm a dog person. I'm not a cat person.
That would be, because I know people who have had like, bumped heads over.
We bumped heads.
Yeah.
There are days we still bump heads about him.
Yeah. We trying to keep it 100. It's not perfect every day, because I will admit I wild out sometimes.
Ooh.
And, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, there's generally resolution.
There is.
And look, and here we are.
Yes.
Here, you're supposed to move over.
Oh.
Go with the prompting.
I'm sorry. I was like, yes, here we are. And I was thinking of the dog. Anywho, but I think that when we think about the seasons, it might be a really good idea to consider what season you're in and what it is you need from each other in that season. Right? I feel like one of the big things that you and I keep saying in this season is we need to feel listened to.
Yeah.
We both, and I think that need and the way in which we need to feel listened to is different than it was some years ago.
And I've said it like, thinking about the fact that we just celebrated our 26th anniversary. And people think sometimes that you're supposed to stay the same.
Ooh.
But if you live in an area and you've been in that area for, any period of time, if that area stayed the exact same, you would think that they were behind the times or the development wasn't, occurring and progress wasn't taking place. And what I've come to realize is that the Ericka that I met all those years ago and that I know now has changed.
Sure.
I expect that you have gone through seasons of growth and development, and the person you were then, you should be a better version of yourself now.
Yes.
And when that occurs, that means that you don't stay the same.
Right.
And that's the same for me. The version I was when we met, I was a 22-year-old man that didn't have the life experiences and the lived experiences that I have today.
Yeah.
And so when I think about those things, you shouldn't expect things to stay the exact same. And the person that you have married or, you're hitched up with, you shouldn't expect them to stay the same.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we all have to adjust and adapt to the change of seasons and phases of life that we all experience.
I think that when we get married, we don't acknowledge or understand that or believe that that is a possibility, that the human that they are on that day will evolve, grow, get better. And sometimes there are areas that get more dug into the ground. Like, the swords that you will fall on 26 years in could be different from what you would have stood for when you got married. And that, I think, is hard for people to stomach. And so I think one big thing that we actually have not addressed is respecting the human that they are at whatever phases there are.
I think you spoke on it, but I think we need to highlight it.
Yeah.
You said like you said early on, think the best.
Yeah.
And I think respecting the human that you are today versus who you were, years ago, it's thinking the best of that person and knowing that they're not intentionally trying to do you harm or wrong.
And I think check yourself to make sure you aren't intentionally doing harm, because I think you and I can make that assumption. Like that's sort of a grounding for us that we consider. Like we know, like I know your intentions are not to be harmful, but I do think that you have to internally check yourself and make sure that that's true, right? Because we can say that, and then I think we do have to pause internally and revisit the fact that our intentions sometimes are impure, right? And we need to change that. We need to
Look,
adjust.
I'm gonna have to start thinking back to when you had these impure intentions towards me.
Well, when we're upset, angry, or defensive, it can be easy to lash out.
Because fighting isn't fair. Because
Fighting
people
isn't
fight
fair.
to win.
Yes. And if you're trying to win, then somebody's gonna lose. And what is at stake if you lose?
Oh, my goodness.
If you say those words, if you do that thing,
Yep.
what is at risk and on the other end of that? I think that's something that people need to think about.
I think what's helped us be successful also is when we're in those moments where we feel like we're retreating to our corners, we stop and we will say,
boxing gloves.
We will stop and say, we came up with this thing to reintroduce ourselves. And it's like when you're starting to retreat into your corners and you're getting ready to
box it out,
come out fighting, that's when you really need to just stop and say, okay, we need a reset at this moment. And our reset was simply as, hi, I'm Chris.
I'm Ericka.
And then we knew that was it's ridiculous. We've known each other forever. But it was just a prompt to say, okay, let's stop and take a pause here because we're about to get into some unfair fighting territory. And that's not where we want to end up, because when you fight and you throw things out, you say things or you do things, some of that stuff is hard to walk back from.
Ooh.
And so we have decided that we're not going to go there. And with that reset, we can get to the heart of what's going on or the heart of the situation, and then we can move forward.
So my hope is always that I haven't done something, said something, or inflicted harm that is irreparable. Would you say that we have been successful in doing that?
I think we have, because we don't fight to hurt one another. Yeah. And I don't really think that we have fights. We coin them as we have dust-ups, once in a while. But we get through it, and we don't even go like days on end of being upset. It's like, no, let's just get to the root of this and let's move it forward. And that's where I think people have to take some of their own pride and set it aside. It's that whole, right to be right. Mm-hmm. You got to set some of that aside to get to the heart of the issue that can help you move forward.
One of the lessons that I believe God gave me for someone else in my life, but I think it applies to our relationship as well, is just I desire our relationship over my need to be right. And if that means I have to give up something, let something go, or set something aside for the moment in order to ensure that we are connected, then that is putting tokens in the love bank. And it's easier to say it than it is to do it. But in practice, the result is that we can both go back and say we haven't done irreparable harm to one another. Like, I don't think I can sit here at all and think through where you've been rude, mean, selfish.
Yeah, my job is to protect you.
Yeah.
So why would I want to hurt you with my words?
Do you feel the same?
I do. I don't feel like you've done things to try and hurt me. I don't feel like you protect me in other ways, and I think that we've both been mindful of that. So when we think about, making it worth it, what would you say is your one, make it worth it to, get to that finish line, run through the tape?
Gosh, honestly, it's hard to pinpoint it to one thing. But I will say it's really good to check in. No matter where you are, let's pause and check in. This is something we do every so often. We might just, hey, how are we doing? Like, sometimes it's on our anniversary, you'll ask a question like, what do you want to see, in the next half, or what do you want to do, or whatever. But sometimes it is this week, what do you need from me, What's going on? Let's pause. Let's make sure that we are prioritizing either each other's schedule or your need for whatever it is. How are we going to move through this next week or this next season or this next year, and do a check-in, however you need to do that? Because I think if we can do that and we can vocalize what our needs are, then that is important. And right now, I think our season is, how do we listen best so that we are feeling heard? That's our check-in recently.
Awesome.
What about you?
I think when I talk about making it worth it, I really go back to, the whole get your story straight, and with that, it's simply as you have got to be open to communicate and talk about what you're feeling or what's going on or how you're perceiving something, because the best way to dispel a misperception is to explain how you received it or how you took it or how it impacted you. And there's too many times in relationships where people will let a small injury, just stay there and not address it. And we know in your body, if you have a small injury and you let it go untreated, it could become worse. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the same thing in relationships. It's these small things that if untreated or undealt with or if neglected, they can just build up.
Yeah.
And so you got all these little things that if they had been addressed at the point, they would have been fine. But one little thing becomes another little thing and another little thing. And now they say, how it says, a mountain out of a molehill. Mm-hmm. When it was a molehill, you could have dealt with it. But now that it's a mountain, it's about to explode or become something much bigger. And so in your communication, I think you have to address those things that are maybe small to begin with, but address them when they're small so they don't become some big thing that can bog you down or really put pressure on your relationship that you don't want to see.
Yeah.
And so that's my make it worth it. So.
Well, in the spirit of something that you say routinely, I wouldn't want to be doing this with anybody else. You say that a lot, actually. And so I
got you right where I want you. I had to go through all this again with something. No, I'm not trying to do that.
No, absolutely not. No, what we're not gonna do is start over. Okay,
it's cheaper to keep up.
It is, because I'm expensive at this point. Like, we ain't got to go down the D word route, but it's definitely cheaper to keep me. Okay, I'm just saying. I save you. What did I say? I save you money every day.
Right. And I appreciate it.
So, but here's to another 26. I wish that we had like a glass to clink or something. We should have did that.
We should have had some confetti to shoot or
just let's pretend,
Clink.
There it is. Awesome. So
until next time,
we're out.
Thank you for spending some of your time with us today.
We appreciate all of your support. So be sure to subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you listen to this podcast.
You can find us on Instagram at For Better and Worth.
And sign up to receive our free guide, The 7 Reasons Your Money Relationship Isn't Working with Your Partner, on ForBetterandWorth.com.
Until next time, we're out of here.